Seedbed's Inferno, the fourth circle. As I stepped into the next layer of hell, my guide walked ahead. I could feel the dry, cracked earth beneath my feet, the heat searing up my body. The pained screaming I heard was beyond anything else I had heard upon my journey. I asked my guide, "What evil spirits lie in this lair?" He turned to me with his crooked brow and said, "Smurfs." Oh.
We're discussing Satanism and the occult this morning.
For the purposes of this study, we will focus on the number 666.
Most people don't realize that 80% of all toys on the market have occultic influence, and these are the most popular.
And linked in suicide notes, police reports, and coroner's reports.
From your regular voice to that of an occultic hero, is that correct?
For decades, Christian groups have claimed that different things are satanic. Polytheistic indigenous traditions, different forms of witchcraft, and many more things throughout history have been deemed as satanic, evil, and against God. But in the 1980s, and continuing to even today, there was a unique resurgence of this moral panic, and it was believed that Satanists were kidnapping and ritually abusing children, leading to a moral outcry known as Satanic Panic. Many trace the origins of this panic and belief in ritual abuse to a 1980 novel called Michelle Remembers. Now, in this novel, Canadian psychologist Lauren Pastor writes about uncovering repressed memories of his patient and later wife, Michelle. Although none of his claims are substantiated by other facts, many took the word as absolute truth. In the book, it's described that Michelle had been tangled up as a young child in a satanic cult called the Church of Satan. In this cult, they would sacrifice animals and humans around her. She was locked in a cage, and she was abused mentally, physically, and sexually. This book was marketed as non-fiction and would later go on to be the template for identifying practices of ritual abuse and satanic worship. Many took this book as near gospel and insisted that there was a deep-seated conspiracy going on where Satanists were kidnapping and abusing and even killing kids. People took this so seriously that there were several allegations made against nannies and daycare workers saying that they were practicing ritual abuse as a part of a satanic pedophilia ring. Most of, if not all of these, had later found out to be false, but some notable ones include the Bronx Five, where 5 men, including a Methodist minister, were wrongfully accused of sexually abusing children in 1984. The case of Bernard Barron, in which in 1984, a gay man was wrongfully accused of sexual misconduct against several minors. It was later found out that the original accusers were a drug-addicted couple that didn't want a gay man to work at their son's daycare. And finally, the one that many believe kicked off the trials, the McMartin preschool case, where 7 teachers were said to have kidnapped children and forced them into an orgy and engage in animal sacrifice to make inappropriate sexual conduct. The initial accusation that kicked off the case was one of a mother who was found out to be unknowingly suffering from schizophrenia. Schools, churches, and even police were encouraged or required to attend seminars on how to identify satanic actions and the ritual abuse that wasn't even really happening. Some of these sessions were led by Dr. Pastor, the author of Michelle Remembers, leading many to believe that he knew the exact signs of this fake conspiracy. This satanic panic coincided with several notable serial killers like Jeffrey Dahmer, Doug Clark, and Carol Bundy and Richard Ramirez, the last of which did claim that some of his killings were satanic. These led police to believe that these killings were also connected to some grander satanic conspiracy in which all the victims were being sacrificed to the Dark Lord. And while there's no substantiating evidence to claim such huge conspiracy, It was at the forefront of many evangelical Christian minds in the 80s and early 90s, but the influence of the believers in the conspiracy goes much farther than any of these arrests or murders. This movement also led to many evangelical groups believing that lots of things in popular culture were satanic or demonic, and that continues even to this day with some things. And I'm sure that many of you guys would recognize some of the things that some folks would believe to be satanic. Take, for instance, heavy metal music or the Harry Potter franchise. Both of these have been claimed by televangelists and evangelicals as being linked with Satan, with Harry Potter endorsing witchcraft and heavy metal music having satanic messages throughout. But I think that it would be fun to do a quick countdown of 5 things that you might not have known that some people have thought were satanic in the 1980s, 90s, or today. Starting with a pretty popular one, Dungeons and Dragons.
Dungeons and Dragons. Some claim it's a simple, harmless game.
D&D, and it's become popular with children anywhere from grammar school on up. Not so with a lot of adults who think it's been connected to a number of suicides and murders.
Swords, poison, spells, battles, maiming, killing.
Hey, it's all imagination.
Is it?
They're becoming acclimated to this very kind of thing, and I began to look through the instruction manual, and I see here how to cast magical spells and mage spells and cleric spells, and you go to the pages that it's listed on, in this instance page 41, and they have complete descriptions of how to cast spells.
So, Dungeons & Dragons, or D&D, is a role-playing game currently produced by Wizards of the Coast and was invented by Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson in the early 70s. They invented it because of their love for military strategy games involving miniatures and maps and many of the other elements that we see in modern RPGs. It's in a fantasy setting, and in the 80s, there were huge concerns about the game being connected to satanic practices. To start, the setting was fantasy, so there were magic, demons, alchemy, evil, villainous cults, etc. People thought that it was a tool used by Satan to introduce elements of the occult into young people's minds. Also, because it's a role-playing game, people could act like somebody else other than themselves. They could be who they wanted to be, and sometimes that involved some debauchery or anarchy. Whoever the player wanted to be. And parents did not like that one bit. They thought that children would be caught up in this world and that they wouldn't be able to distinguish their character from real life. This is best seen in the cult classic 1984 comic Dark Dungeons, which was produced by Jack Chick as a commentary or piece of propaganda on the evils that Dungeons and Dragons might be able to produce in any young, innocent person. The comic, along with a 2014 film of the same name by L. Gabriel Gonda, portrayed RPGs as a tool of the devil used to promote the sacrifice of young persons to the Dark Lord.
I'm Marcy.
No, you are not Marcy.
Who are you? I'm Blackleaf, the thief of the shadows.
RPG! RPG! RPG!
There were also a couple of homicides and suicides which the media linked to Dungeons & Dragons. Most of these connections have been completely debunked, but one of the most notable ones is James Dallas Egbert III, who went missing, and when it was found out that he played D&D, it had been assumed that the game was the cause of his disappearance. The detective who worked on the disappearance, William Deere, wrote an expose about the whole experience called The Dungeon Master, and it's really exploitive and it's exaggerated, but it's kind of interesting if you want to give it a read. More about how somebody can abuse a tragedy rather than how Dungeons & Dragons is satanic, though. Also, there are lots of fictional accounts about this disappearance, one of which is called Mazes and Monsters and stars Tom Hanks. You should give it a watch.
Pardue, what are you doing?
Going to join the Great Hall.
You can't, it's a trap.
I have spells. I'm going to fly.
You don't have enough points. I am the maze controller.
Maze controller?
Yes. And I have absolute authority in this game.
But again, it was found out that many of the disappearances, suicides, or killings had nothing to do with Dungeons & Dragons. For example, in Egbert's case, he had been dealing with depression, loneliness, parental pressure, and drug addiction. In reality, the game tended to attract people who may not have fit in with others, and may have just been more susceptible to things like psychosis outside of the game. And all the critics, all they were doing was demonizing the important social interaction these hurting people might have needed to engage in. The next one is one that you might not have ever heard of in connection to satanic practices: the Smurfs. Now, this one's kind of cheating, because a majority of 1980s cartoons were said to be satanic and have messages and imagery of Lucifer. Rainbow Bright was said to have held the connection between humans and the devil. My Little Pony and Barbie were both agents of Satan, and Scooby-Doo exposed children to spirits and ghouls. He-Man himself claimed to be the master of the universe, so he must be holding himself to a higher position than God, right? Although these arguments all sound ridiculous, they were all used in Turmoil in the Toy Box, a 1986 book by Phil Phillips about the evils of some of your favorite 80s cartoons. And while he covers a good portion of them, I found the strangest evidence coming from the cartoons with the little blue guys, Smurfs. He claimed that the Smurfs were all in a gay cult, apart from Smurfette, who was transgender. That they were blue and with black lips and therefore were undead, and that they practiced occult witchcraft and alchemy. Many modern historians, however, just believe that, at this point, both the author and televangelist were grasping for straws, trying to find some connection to Satan and any cartoons or media that children were absorbing. Speaking of absorbent, the next thing that some people thought might be satanic were Pampers diapers and their parent company, Procter & Gamble. Procter & Gamble's logo for a long time was a smiling moon that looked like this. It evolved to become this logo here, which was claimed to have a lot of satanic imagery, including 2 horns and an inverted 666 right down here. The moon has some relevance to both the Islamic faith, which sees the moon as an important symbol of Allah, and many polytheistic faiths as well will see the moon as a symbol, or they will see the moon as a god itself. Nevertheless, there were also allegations that Procter & Gamble made donations to the Church of Satan and asked if there were Christians that could stop them. Their president at the time said, "There are not enough Christians in the United States to make a difference." All of these allegations have been not only debunked, but it was later proven that Amway, one of their rivals in the lifestyle brand industry, had perpetrated this rumor as slander. Later on, in 2007, there was a court case in which Procter & Gamble won $19 million against Amway for this very case. And that goes to show you, the scariest thing in life might not be Satan, but unethical business practices.
Instead, products will show a small rectangular grid of bars coupled with a series of numbers.
It says you can't buy or sell if you don't have the mark of the beast.
Next, barcodes were as a sign of the mark of the beast in Revelation 13, which reads, "Then I saw another beast rising out of the earth. It had 2 horns like a lamb and spoke like a dragon. It exercises all the authority of the first beast in its presence and makes the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast. Those mortal wounds were healed. It performs great signs, even making fire come down from heaven to earth in front of people, and by the signs that it is allowed to work in the presence of the beast. It deceives those who dwell in the earth, telling them to make an image for the beast that was wounded by the sword and yet lived. And it was allowed to give breath to the image of the beast, so that the image of the beast might even speak and might cause those who would not worship the image of the beast to be slain. Also it causes all, both small and great, both rich and poor, both free and slave, to be marked on the right hand or forehead, so that no one can buy or sell unless he has the mark, that is, the name of the beast or the number of its name. This calls for wisdom. Let the one who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. In Revelation 13, the mark of the beast is seen as representative of belonging to the Antichrist, or Satan. And if you have this, you can buy and sell things, and you belong to the world, but you also belong to the beast. Lots of things have been considered this mark, specifically a lot of logos, like the Monster Energy drink logo. But normally, this sign has to do with the number at the end of the passage, 666. In the 80s, with the invention of the charged couple device, the barcode as we know it was used in a majority of products and was used as a digital inventory system. Some Christians saw it, however, as the mark of the beast. It was said that it had 3 guiding lines, 2 on the side and 1 on the middle, representing 666, and people took it seriously. And in the 80s, many groups refused to buy things with a barcode on them. However, in more modern times, the barcode has become more commonplace, even in fairly evangelical circles. It has been on food, clothes, and, well, even Bibles. Although, there was an instance in Bogoyubovu, Russia, in 2007, in which they didn't want their new passports to have barcode stickers on them, as they believed that they were a sign of Satan.
Monsters in their pocket. So Pokemon is a game that teaches children how to enter into the world of witchcraft, how to cast spells, how to use psychic phenomena. It's just a game. To which I respond, Russian roulette is just a game.
Finally, another thing that evangelicals thought was extremely satanic and evil was Pokemon. In the late 90s, Pokemon was released in Japan and later America. Fairly quickly, many evangelicals began to have problems with Pokemon. Now, Pokemon includes elements of Shinto because of its cultural ties to Japan, and includes magic and ghost-type Pokemon. They even have mediums who contact spirits. These were all seen as signs of occult or pagan practices that people didn't want their children exposed to. Pokemon also includes a kind of metamorphosis-like system that Pokemon undergo, which is called evolution. Creationists believed that Pokemon supports evolution rather than creation theories, and they thought that was wrong. Because the game seems to disagree with some of their beliefs, all of a sudden it's seen as evil or satanic. They also believe that the Poke Rap, which was a song included at the end of every episode of Pokemon, contains satanic messaging. And finally, in Pokemon, there's one specific town, Lavender Town, that the player goes to in Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow. And the music sounds like this. Some people believe that this music can cause psychosis, or can make people hurt themselves or others, and even has caused the suicide of some people. All of these have, of course, been debunked as rumors and just creepypastas. But in conclusion, the era of the 1980s and 1990s in America is extremely interesting when it comes to satanic theories, but it didn't end there. There are satanic theories that continue to this day, and conspiracies and groups of people that really believe them. With the QAnon conspiracies, people believe that celebrities sacrifice and abuse children. And above all, what do these conspiracies do? What does all of this hatred of popular culture create? Fear. A fear of trying new things. A fear of expanding one's worldview. And fear can be very dangerous. The Smurfs and Dungeons & Dragons don't cause near as much damage as fear of the unknown does. Maybe those things that people thought were satanic can teach us about things. Teach us about how to coexist, collaborate, love one another, be the best person we can be, and overall, not be afraid of things that are different. Thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it. All my citations are down in the description below, and a lot of different YouTubers that I took a lot of inspiration from. I really appreciate you watching, and I hope you have a great day.